Just, it's just a thing. I get a little stage fright. When we get into it, it'll go smoother. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Gabi Chai. I am here with Dr. Anna Blessing. She's located in Tucson, Arizona, and she is the founder of Tucson Biofeedback. And I will let you, Dr. Anna, tell us a little bit about your practice.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Gabi, for having me on. Tucson Biofeedback is a frequency wellness clinic. So we specialize in non-invasive frequency tech. That is neurofeedback, biofeedback, microcurrent. We have 9 treatment forms. And what we do is we operate as a ministerial practice, not as a medical practice, which allows us to be able to work on behalf of the people instead of the insurance or medical industry. So we have the freedom to be able to put together very customized programs and approaches that allow us to really look at you as an individual rather than trying to fit you in some type of medical box.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, this journey of friendship that we started last year and just working together and sharing ideas. So I'm super happy to talk with you today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the frequency wellness field and kind of your story of how that came to be?
Yeah. So I, as a teenager, started having a lot of health issues. I ended up being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and then they label a bunch of other things on top of that, anxiety, depression, because when you don't feel good, you're going to be depressed and you're going to be anxious because your whole nervous system is dysregulated. I had migraines about 3 to 5 times a week, and I would be in chronic pain. I had chronic fatigue. I had psoriasis, a whole list of just symptoms and challenges that were immense. I had a lot of histamine issues, so a lot of food sensitivities, massive chemical sensitivities. And the medical system, of course, just wanted to prescribe medication and basically, as a teenager, told me, well, you're manifesting like autoimmune-like expressions. So where you're headed is kind of the best days are behind you. As a teenager, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So I know the power of the body and the innate intelligence that it has to heal when the interference has been removed, and it has what it needs to do what it does best, which is keep us vital, healthy, and well. So it set me on a journey. It was just quite a few years of just learning and changing things out in my life, which ultimately evolved into frequency medicine, because I did a lot of the functional medicine. I did a lot of the supplements and a lot of the physical aspects, and it would temporarily work or give some type of relief, but it wasn't addressing the underlying issue, which ultimately led me into starting to understand the way our cells work in quantum biomechanics. And that's where biofeedback came in, neurofeedback, frequency, just modalities, because what we were doing, if you can picture a pyramid, the physical is about 3%. Obviously, we know scientifically that our world is made of 3% matter, very, very small amount. So here we are trying to address the 3%, thinking it's going to solve the rest of it. So we are working with the pyramid upside down. So when I found that out, I like flipped the pyramid this way, where 97% is those quantum biomechanics. It's how the mind, how the stressors, how trauma, I had traumatic issues as a child, and I had to overcome those, PTSD, CPTSD. Those were all manifesting as physical issues. And they're finding now that 80 to 90%, if not 100, is completely related to emotional, spiritual, and traumatic experiences. So when I flipped that pyramid, the right side, I was able to work from that foundation of the quantum biomechanics, where the frequency wellness came into play. It transformed everything from my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So from there, I am a 1-3 in human design. So I'm an establisher of truth and knowledge. I'm a seeker, and then also an experimenter. So I just dove headfirst into the world of frequency medicine and ultimately put together a clinic, the first of its kind. It doesn't exist anywhere else, where we bring all of these modalities together. So a lot of times you'll find neurofeedback over here, you'll find biofeedback here, frequency specific microcurrent here. And you have to go to 10 different practitioners to be able to achieve what we have brought together to work simultaneously. And ultimately, that's what birthed the frequency clinic, is my own journey of healing, and then my continual, I'm always learning and educating about this. And this is not a new This is not a new industry. I mean, this was around long before the FDA and the AMA. We're talking the late 1800s. They were utilizing frequency specific microcurrent electricity for health until it became a threat to the medical industry and the pharmaceutical companies that came into play right around 1910. That's when everything kind of got pushed to the edge. So it's like this resurrection of something that was here a long time ago.
So interesting, the history of medicine and how you're kind of like bringing something back that was so potent and hidden, really. Just to interject my own story so that the listeners understand like where we're meeting. I also run a ministry. I'm a mushroom minister. I'm a forager and a steward of the sacred mushroom. I work with all different kinds of mushrooms and plant spirit medicines. Dr. Anna and I have really connected over the ability to heal with these sort of hidden practices that are so nurturing to the spirit, as you were talking about so gracefully. The 3% of material world, and flipping the triangle upside down and addressing the root of our illness or our well-being on the emotional, spiritual, psychological plane, and how important that is to healing. I feel like this topic is so poignant right now, and so many people are starting to clue into this medicine. So I want to ask, and thank you for sharing so much. What was the timeline for you? Like, how long did it take you from like starting to experiment on yourself until like where you are today? Was this like a 5 years, a decade? Like, when did you start to get really serious, like start to really see results and start to,
So the first thing I changed back in 2008 was my water. And structured water, it is something I communicate with every single person who walks in, is the quality of your water. And that is a conversation we could spend easily 100 hours on its own. So to keep it kind of just like planting the seed, I changed my water to healthy, properly structured water that was also hydrogen rich. That's a whole other world of scientific research, but it's huge. That shifted things for me. I'm talking my chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia pain, just like the overarching things. Within 48 hours, 80% turned around. So that's what immediately brought into my awareness. Okay, if water alone can do this,
that's amazing, by the way. That is fast.
Very fast. I was young. So let me interject by saying I was 23 at that point. So the younger you are, the faster your cells also can, reproduce and regenerate. Right. They, like children, for example, they respond typically very well. Behavioral things is another situation, and there's multiple layers for that. But for me, those 48 hours, everything shifted. That's what activated everything. That's when I started just doing research on like, okay, what's going on in our body? What's going in our body? What are these things doing? And I was always very connected with health. So the water piece was huge, because that does work on the emotional spirit. I mean, emotions are like water element. So it really works on a lot of that. That's when things turned around, but it was a process of detoxification, of release, of kind of repatterning within for several years. And I like to say, because probably about 5 years, it was like I had a machete and was in the jungle, and like nobody was there to lead the way. I had to figure all this out. Like this clinic, I always tell people, you're lucky, because what took me years to put together and do myself, we have now condensed and put into 3 to 6 month healing programs. And so for me, it's a different situation than people coming into us. Right. But because my health improved by 80% just from that change alone, I had the energy, I had the capacity to continue on that journey and start piecing it together. And it's like a treasure hunt. Honestly, your healing journey is a recipe. Your life is a treasure hunt. And those clues, you have to piece them together. They're not going to be handed to you. And there is always a treasure at the end, our own treasure. And that can be infinite in what it is. And so it was like I was going through with this machete, picking up these clues, piecing everything together, where eventually I had something that I could present to others that was in an organized structure that is still customizable.
Wow, that's so it's so awesome. I'm so happy that you followed your heart and followed the results and forged your own path. It's brave. And I have felt this way on my journey as well, that I just had to, you know, trust myself. So I'm so glad that you understood that that's what you need to do from such a young age. It's not easy. So I really love it. And I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why you have so much success and help so many people down in Tucson. I can't wait to come to your clinic someday.
Yes.
So it started with the water, and then like, where did you go from there? What other modalities did you move into?
It started a lot with so a lot of the tools came in later, but I was kind of working on rewiring my thought processes and going into like stored trauma. So it evolved into different kind of forms of neurological repatterning through like techniques of sound and light and meditation, and then the subconscious biofeedback is huge. Like that, I mean, my body was manifesting and expressing symptoms of release from some of the sexual trauma that I endured as a child, not from my family at all, but it was like patterned in my body. And so when I started going through that, I felt physical discomfort when it was leaving, but I knew what was happening. So it was like all of these pieces kind of took me from one thing to another, but the huge part was really working on that stored trauma, because our cells, our body keeps memory of everything that we have ever endured, witnessed, or even processed. So that was all starting to release from my cells. And that takes time. You can't do it overnight because there's so much in there and it can be very overwhelming. So healing takes time and repetition. And I'm still evolving. Like I'm still using new things, and I love it because we never arrive. I always say we're all a journey in progress. Sometimes we're out of that initial healing, and then we're able to move more into like performance or activating a higher expression of ourselves. So once you're out of that like survival, pain, and suffering, now you're a journey in progress to reach a more advanced version of yourself. So it really never ends.
Absolutely. And I feel like as a collective, a lot of us are starting to feel like we're ready to, you know, manifest into our callings and into our service. Like we went through this intense period of healing, and obviously, like you said, it's an ongoing process. I mean, it just reminded me when you were talking about the storage of the memories in our cells and really in the water in our bodies and in the fascia. That it's our own trauma from this life, but perhaps even trauma from our ancestors. That's like a really big topic of discussion right now. And as I commune with like the plants and fungi, I feel that this deeply, the connection that I have to my ancestors and their wisdom, not only their trauma, but also their wisdom. Yes. How I've held that, and how, like you talk about gene keys to me sometimes, which I don't know much about it, but I'm very intrigued. Yeah. Just that there's all these like things that I unlock, and I think probably our listeners that are interested in this conversation will maybe relate to that as well.
Yeah. So one thing I found with combining what we do with frequency medicine and your amazing mushroom sacred medicine blends, I'm on Holy Trinity right now too, which I love. It's amazing. And the two work so synergistically together because, I mean, we've had some really incredible moments with certain people. Well, they have a memory of a past life death or trauma while they're hooked up because their cells are releasing it. Others will have memories or like visions of something from their generations, like their ancestors, and it's all connected. And so when you bring in, especially the mushroom medicine, it softens it and allows you to journey with a lot more ease. Like you can see it without being so charged. It's like it disconnects you from being triggered and charged. So you become the observer of what's going on inside of your body and your brain. And that allows, that allows everything to rewire. But then you combine neurofeedback, an actual like frequency tech that goes in and reprograms those cells and those neural pathways and those biological patterns. I mean, there's not a more perfect marriage that I'm aware of right now than those two. And the ancestral things are huge. 50 to 90% of all the things that we're suffering from are not ours.
Yeah.
We can pick up our neighbors. We can pick up our strangers. All of a sudden, like your knee can hurt. It's not yours, 50 to 90%. So a big part of what I work with people is, okay, let's clear. We have to return to sender and dissolve what's not yours. Because if immediately we can eliminate 50% or 90%, and now we address what's remaining, how much easier is your healing going to be? Because we're all empathic beings. We all are connected. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we are all connected, and we absorb and pick up things from the earth, from the collective, especially from those around us. And that is huge, especially with like, I've done multiple journeys with the mushrooms where it's allowed me to trace to the point of creation. Like I'll ask, okay, consciously, where is this pattern showing up? Okay, is it maternal side? Is it paternal side? Okay, it's maternal. Is it mom's paternal or maternal? And I'll trace it down to the point of creation and be able to dissolve that consciously without being charged or fearful, or the things that usually come up when you are journeying with something like that.
Yeah, I love talking with you specifically about these things because I feel like you are so good at, your mind is like so open. I don't know if it's because you've been doing so much work with the frequency medicine or you're just innately like this, but you're so good at like bringing it far, like just bringing the idea of how the healing works to a very like, how do I say this? You're good at tracing things. I guess it's like following the path of the organic and frequency technology to where it leads in our bodies and our spirits. And I just really appreciate that. Like I remember I watched a video of you some time ago now. I think it's when you were in LA and you were talking about how what you just said, how we pick up, we're empathetic beings, and that we pick up feelings from others and those around us, and that sometimes it's just as simple as saying like, return this to the sender. Mm-hmm. And you even said in that video, I used to go down and try to figure out like who sent it or where it was coming from. Don't need to do that. And and I love the mushrooms for exactly what you're saying. And I explain this to the parishioners that I work with as well, that it allows you to be more objective. So when you get these messages that are like, we've been gaslighted. Ultimately, we've been brought up in this material world where there is no path to follow. It's like, this is it. Yeah. And people are so turned off by the religions. I don't blame them, that were available, they're either just like something that had been so regurgitated and manipulated and brought so much suffering, death, destruction, and discord. Or it was like something new agey and like a cult, like where the real spirituality, I think that people are understanding now, it's like, it comes from within. It comes from following your spirit, your soul, like what resonates, finding people and connecting with people and their stories, and just like living more openly. So we were so conditioned, but where am I going with this? I think just getting to that objective state where you can no longer be so judgmental of the intuitive process and that journey, that path to like a more enlightened way of living is so important. And I love that the mushrooms can bring us there. And I told you that I do have some frequency machines here that I have acquired that I acquired last year. And I was wondering about like finding the frequencies. What do you do to find the frequencies that heal people? And I know I'm straying from our notes, but this is just like organically, I just need to know, like, what do you do to find out like what frequency somebody needs?
So the people we work with, when we do an intake, we do a biofeedback analysis, and this generates like 40 pages of data that I review. So I've seen over 10,000 scans. So it's just like anybody, right? I can see pattern recognition really quick.
Yes.
So when I look at reports and data, the pattern recognition for me is like this fast. You know, for other people, it's like hieroglyphs, right? It's their first time seeing it. So that's one of my abilities is pattern recognition and picking up in the information field. And the information field is a whole other conversation that this amazing man is doing immense studies in Germany. He is also frequency tech. So the information field is basically what's the patterns that are then pushing in, and then they present in our cells. So me as just an intuitive gift, I can read people's information field. So that's one element that me as a gift can do. And then the data comes in as well. So I bring those two together, and then we formulate a plan of action. So we have certain foundational things that we have found pretty much work, just like all of life. There's water, air, you know, pure water, pure air that we need. So there's certain things that we build from the foundation. And then depending on what most people are going through a dysregulated nervous system, let's just be honest. So there's certain things it's like, we got to get this foundation first. Once this foundation is set, your nervous system is regulating itself, you know, you're out of this constant trigger of fight or flight. Now we can go in and really fine tune things. So we really work with a lot of the foundational pieces first, and then we're able to do that, whether we scan through biofeedback, I also muscle test. So there's a number of different ways. Sometimes they will surprise you. You won't necessarily think, this is what I need. It's like, hey, my arm hurts, so I need arm frequency. Not necessarily. You may need something that is connected to the meridian. That arm may be connected to something going on in the tooth. So that takes a precise eye and somebody trained to be able to interpret the messages of the body. We all can, but we have to remember how to do it. I don't even think we learn. I think it's a remembrance more. So we have to clear like the programming and the conditioning and the indoctrination that we have all gone through, so we can start learning and interpreting the messages. So that's a huge part of what we do in the clinic. And we do work with people remotely too. So not all sessions can be done remotely, but we can work with people that way. And a big part, we always say we're an empowerment and education center first. Second, we are a wellness clinic. And so the biggest piece is we want to empower people where they don't need us or another doctor the rest of their life. We teach them, we guide them, we empower them to start to learn the messages of their body. So then if let's say they have a frequency tech at home like you, then you can start to either muscle test or pendulum test. There's a number of different ways, or sometimes people will just know. They'll just intuitively know exactly what they need. And that comes through that empowerment and education process.
Right. And you've talked with me before about unlearning and like opening to, what was it that you just said before that? I'm sorry. It was like
remembering.
Yeah, remembering. Exactly. I've loved our conversations about the remembering, and also when you talk about the sequences in the body, I think you've studied a lot about meridians, but also like you have an innate way of remembering things, and that open mind. It's just really amazing. So thank you so much for what you do and for sharing this with us. And I love how you say that your clinic is an empowerment clinic, because like you said, this knowledge is inside of us. And I've always felt that like taking this movement to take our health and wellness responsibility back in an autonomous way, and to move away from big pharma and like make educated, and well, they say educated, but like remembering how to heal ourselves is just so important. So what you're doing is really just along those lines of reconnecting us with our intuition. And that's what I try to encourage people to do with the sacred mushroom as well. When people ask me about protocol or what they should be taking, I want to know like what resonates with them. I mean, when they see the offerings, what is it that calls to them, speaks to them? It's kind of like muscle testing in a way. It's like what calls to you. You know, nobody knows better than oneself what's going on, but we've been so conditioned to give away our power to some, you know, in our responsibility, really, because we can't, in that way, if someone makes a mistake, it's not us. Maybe that's part of it. I mean, I don't want to get down on us, but really, we're not, I don't want to get down on us, humanity, but it is, I do see it. And I think we're at a point where the healing is so collective now that is one thing that people are really waking up to it. So I feel like we're both going to be really busy. And I'm glad that we work in the ministerial space. It just feels so right. And I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit embarrassed about it at first. It was hard for me to tell people that I was a minister at first, because of all the stigma, but I've been met with such open hearts and open minds and understanding, and people we're all, you know, spiritually connected. Like, doesn't matter what our specific beliefs are. And this kind of leads me to like what you were talking about the other day, and what you've been working on recently with like raising the collective vibration, and how, if you want to touch a little bit on what we were talking about as far as coming together and breaking down these walls of separation that have really suited the powers that be. What were you saying to me the other day about that?
Yeah, so there's divine or cosmic laws. And when I use the word law, it's very different than man-made laws. They're like principles, right, of how creation and existence works. And our language limits us, honestly. Like, language is so limiting. So it's the best way to describe it. There are like principles or divine cosmic laws that are in play, whether we acknowledge them or not. If we do acknowledge them and learn them, our life becomes easier. If we remain ignorant of them, we constantly create problems in our life because we're working against the natural way that this universe and life works as a whole. And everything's biofeedback. So what we put out, we return, and then it becomes loops or patterns. And one of the laws that I was revisiting, because I constantly reread these, you know, these are a big part. Naturally, innately, my soul just knew them. So a lot of them, it was just like, oh yeah, of course, duh, right. And but I'll reread them and learn and see with new eyes and revisit them. And how am I aligning with these things? Always checking in with myself. And the one that stuck out to me recently was the law of co-creation. That's the one you're talking about. So the law of co-creation is, if two people come together, everything is squared. So if two people come together, they're not the power of two, they're the power of four. Four people come together is the power of 16. So you have to come together in unified intention. And this is why division is so, like, the powers that were, their agenda is all about division. Democrat, Republican, mask, no mask, you know, everything is like here or here. Right. And there's in a world of infinite possibilities, that's absurd. Really?
Exactly.
Really? There's this or this?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and then pick one and resent the other. It's just
yeah. And to be charged and attached to your belief. Yes. And beliefs are entrapments. They are. Yeah. They can serve us as we're evolving, but eventually we even need to let go of beliefs, right, and move into awareness and being able to consciously choose in a moment, be able to consciously see the big picture here and all of the layers of things. And I mean, to think there's only two ways of seeing things is just ridiculous. I mean, and so they have used that to their advantage, because when you bring 140 people together in a unified agenda, you don't have to like each other. Heck, you can hate each other. You can even have different agendas, personal agendas. But if you can bring 140 people together with one unified vision, one intention, hold that, work towards that, even with your differences, you will create an entire reality in a world and in a planet like we have now. So what did the powers that were do? They did exactly that for thousands of years, if not millions of years. And it's so frustrating because here we are always talking about, you know, new earth and 5D and ascension and health and all of these things. And they're beautiful, but then we're bickering about, you should be vegan, well, I was dying as a vegan, so I eat paleo. Okay, well, you're evil because you're eating animals. And this can go on and on and on. You know, you believe in Jesus, I don't believe in Jesus, like Buddha, I mean, you name it, right?
The
So all
dogma.
of those personal points of views, I'm like, hold on your personal points of views, walk with what makes you a better person, and keep in mind the agenda and intention that we all have, which is we want a peaceful world. We want a world where, okay, so if animals are eaten, that it's intentional, like the Native Americans did. It was very intentional in many ways, like bring consciousness back to it without judgment.
Right.
And that's why this reality has been so screwed up, is because those individuals, those families understand that. So they remain in power. And as long as we continue to bicker over these little things that are really just our personal path, our personal path is going to be unique and infinite in the ways that it expresses. And if we can accept that and still say, let's do this. Hey, I can take the same stage as you. I'm a vegan, you're a paleo, you're a radiologist, you're a chemotherapy specialist. I'm somebody who does urine therapy, who believes in healing cancer naturally. Right. But we all want this world to be healthier. We all want a safe world for our children. And we innately, we want that, all of us. Right. And if that is the thing that we can't even get 140 of us together to really unify in that, we have a problem. And so that's where a lot of the frustration lies, right? Because it's like, out of what, we're almost at 9 billion people, 140 of us could come together and hold that vision, even with our differences. Unity does not mean sameness.
I think we can. I think we can. Yeah, we can do that. And I think what you're saying about what I was going to ask you is like, what is that vision, you know, and what do we all want? And I'm like, when I was, you know, writing down notes last night and stuff, and I'm like, you know, when I was making my website, it's exactly what you said. I mean, how is it that this idea is, it's exactly the same. It's health, it's prosperity, it's peace.
Yes.
That's it. And we are at a critical time right now. There is so much going on. I think it's important to really work on these. So how would you envision these 140 people coming together, and what would we need to do?
Well, they do things like the Bilderberg group, right? And they get together and they put together an actual plan of action. That's probably asking a little too much where we're at right now. But the main thing is, okay, if every day, I think it's like 98 seconds, I could be some seconds off, 98 seconds roughly. If you hold one intention and vision in your mind for 96 seconds without interference, without thinking like, oh, I need to go do this today. Like, okay, if you do that, start over. Like, hold it for 96 seconds. It's not that difficult, but yes, it does take training because the brain likes to get distracted. Yes. That's the equivalent to 1 million action hours. So if you just say, okay, for 2 minutes a day, all of us who are listening to this, all of us who have the vision for a greater, better, more beautiful world, we know that there can be pristine water, pure air, food that is just so nourishing and so tasteful. There can be harmony between all nature, the way we build, the way we create corporations and companies, the way we approach our body, our health, the way we bring back sacred sex alchemy, everything becomes intentional. If we can just hold the space and hold the vision for intentional living, conscious living out of our hearts through divine love, purity, and peace for 2 minutes a day, that will start putting it into the information field where it will get stronger. And it can change in a second. This is what people don't realize about the power that we are. The power of our mind is we can change an entire reality and all the constructs in the blink of an eye. If we come together in that way, it can shift so quickly. Every single issue that we're facing now, every single thing could be solved within a year. Food shortages, housing shortages, all of the tax fraud that the governments go through, you know, every single thing, issue, climate, all of that could be resolved in less than a year.
So when we do these 2 minutes, I mean, it sounds easy, but we all know it's like Mind is a powerful,
Uh-huh.
powerful organ. It's okay if we like make mistakes while we're doing it. We're learning how, but do we have to do it at the same time, or can we just like is it enough to just set aside that time during the day to like open our minds to that? Are there tools that we can use? Are there like one tool that I have discovered at a thrift store? Me and my book thrifting has led me to some amazing places. But the book Letting Go by Dave Hawkins,
Yes.
he, I mean, it was just so weird. Like I read it and or it was just so meant to be. I just, I do a lot of like opening the book in a random place and reading. Like I'm not super
I'm that way too.
yeah, and like I just read like a few chapters and I think I changed. Like it changed me.
Yeah.
And I had read some of his material a long time ago and it changed me then too, but this was profound. Like I was able to release a lot of anger. So it was just like, oh man, it was so good. And then when I talked to you about it, you said you were revisiting that book as well, like around the same time. So it's kind of like how like we come to these conclusions or these like manifestations, like we really are coming together. I believe it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And books like this or in sharing our meetings, sharing this video with people, like just inspiring each other and like doing what we do with our work and our ministries, and just connecting, putting it out there. And I think these are good tools. I don't know if there's like more like direct tools that
Yeah. So what you're talking about are seeds of consciousness. So
yeah.
all of us who do it individually, we're planting seeds of consciousness in the unified field. And that field is available to all of us at any given time. There are tech that can recognize that. Science is always far slower than our knowing. Our knowing will always be validated by science eventually.
I love when you say this. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, it's like, and that's where a lot of the medicine women, like we women, when our intuition, we know things. We knew things about herbs before science could prove things. Indigenous people knew things about cells before science could. So eventually we'll always catch up. I always say, if I speak something, eventually, whether I'm alive or dead, science will eventually affirm it. Because what I speak is what I'm tapping into, and I know it to be true. And so the seeds of consciousness, if you just take 2 minutes a day, yes, it can be difficult, especially if you're doing something on behalf of yourself and others. It's like we have this built-in self-sabotage mechanism, where it's like we're programmed to think things can never be that good. This is just the way things are. This is the way things always will be. Those are all lies. So we just have to be like, okay, thank you for your resistance. Thank you for your doubt, but I'm going to send you to Aruba right now while I do this 2 minutes. If you want to come back after that, if you want to invite him back, cool. Sometimes I send him on a permanent vacation. But what you do is you talk to it, personify it. Don't think it's you. Personify it and figure out. I'll always ask in sessions, is it male? Is it female? What kind of personality? Once you personify it and separate it from being you, you can do whatever you want with it. Dissolve it, keep it around, whatever. But those seeds of consciousness are planted in that field and we can all access them and water those seeds together. It's always more powerful together. Like if you can come together with 144 people in some type of meditative circle, that is going to be amplified. The power of us coming together, that is just always going to be amplified, but it's not always feasible or possible at all times. So your seeds also plant inside that garden. Another huge piece, which I'm a massive advocate for this, is vision boards. So we just did another vision board, physical vision board, not if you want to manifest something in the physical realm, don't put it on Pinterest, because then you'll manifest it in like the metaverse. Me personally, I'm like, I don't want to have a cruise in the metaverse. I want to be on a physical cruise. So I put it on a physical vision board. That's another thing that can get tricky too. So my husband and I just made a vision board this year, and we save all of ours over the past 10, 15 years that we've made them, 10 plus years. And we've achieved everything on them. Every single thing that, and those, some of them were big, huge things. So we've achieved every single one on them. And we haven't made one in a few years because we were still working on the ones we had made before. Now that we've accomplished every single thing, we made a whole new one. And they've done a study in Harvard where I think it's like 88% of people, they checked in with them several years later, 88% of people achieved what they put on their vision board. It was like 40 something percent achieved what they wrote down, and then like 1% achieved just what they thought about. So you can see that the power of the vision board is very, very important. And of course, they didn't check in over the course of their life. It was just a few year study, but I probably, like us, over the past decade plus, we've achieved everything. So vision boards are huge. And even if you're like, okay, I can't really slow my mind down. Okay, create a vision board. Maybe you have a personal one. Maybe you have a collective one you want to see on the earth. Do you want unicorns to be back on the earth? I do. And dragons and fairies and magical worlds. Like, heck, who wouldn't want that? Maybe you make a collective one that's really magical and seems really out there. And then you have a personal one. Just put them in front of you and look at them for 2 minutes. That will start planting those seeds, and it's also going to start programming your mind, because the eyes are the window to the soul, but the eyes also program the reticular activating system within the brain.
Wow. It is so powerful. We we write our goals for the year every New Year's. That's kind of like a tradition we hold. And when we look back, we have done all of it.
Yeah.
And I do notice I still do this like self-sabotaging thing where I'm like, oh no, that's too big. And I don't put a time frame on my goal. But I am like really, I think lots of us were working on releasing those, I don't know, just coming more into our power. And in that, like I was telling you this morning, I feel like as I come into my power, I'm actually healing my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that actually leads me to every single one of these topics. By the way, I feel like we could talk about for like days on end.
Yeah.
But so who is someone that you believe, like in my practice, I noticed that really I try to work with people that the sacred mushroom medicine is going to be effective for. Like, I don't want to, if someone's taking lots of pharmaceuticals or very avoidant of their responsibility, I sometimes will say this may not be like a good time for you to start doing this, like, because it's just like putting more gasoline on the fire. It's like just overload and like maybe come back like later or whatever. So I'm really like looking at people like to see if they're taking responsibility for their health. And even if someone's been through a lot or they have some, remnants of their old patterns, like that's okay. If I can see them moving in a certain direction, I'm like, this is probably going to be helpful for this person. So in your field, with the frequency wellness, what kind of person actually heals? And just in general, like I know you've studied a lot of people that have witnessed and helped in like miraculous healings, like from really chronic illness. And I know you work with a lot of very chronic illness and maybe even terminal illness. Like, who is somebody, or what's the archetype that you see like the best results in?
Yes. So we tend to get very complex cases. Like our specialty seems to attract very complex people and cases and multiple layers of things. And a lot of times we find that these individuals are not just healing themselves, they're healing their entire bloodlines, whether they know it or not. So that's, I think, why a lot of even natural medicine has fallen short for them, because it's such a deep, in this life, they've taken on such a deep purpose and role through their healing of their physical form, and not just for themselves, but for their bloodlines. So a lot of them are going to be multiple autoimmunes, migraines, fibromyalgia, a lot of like algias, syndromes. We don't ever get people with like one thing. We get people with like 10 to 20 things. And so it's unwinding all of those things one at a time and allowing Herring's law of cure to come into play. And so those would be the people that come in. Now, your question with who, the difference between those who achieve miraculous results and those who maybe achieve mediocre is willingness. It's the willingness to go all in. It's the willingness to see things maybe we haven't wanted to see. It's the willingness to listen to our body, not think we know. Because I always tell people, if you knew, you wouldn't be here. Right. If you could have it figured out here, you wouldn't be here. So it's the willingness. Like if you don't have that willingness, and you're resisting your own process, you're working against yourself. So the ones who are like, wellness plan, tell me what to do. Okay, this, oh, read this book, do this exercise, come in for these sessions. And they do, it's like night and day within months. I mean, we're talking decades of issues,
Wow.
usually generations of issues, but decades of them personally experiencing them. In a matter of months, they have completely turned around. And so willingness would be the huge thing. We're not for the person who is like dabbling, or who is like, I want to feel better, but I want something to happen really quick and have a quick fix. And I'm not quite ready to let go of my medications, or, I'm going to go see my doctor and continue to give my power away. We're not the clinic for you. We're the clinic to empower and rise you, and for you to acknowledge, okay, the power is, if I created this, I can uncreate this too. As soon as you acknowledge that, everything starts to shift. So that would be the most important thing. And most of the time, by the time people land with us, they've tried so many things over the decades and years and are so frustrated, and they feel hopeless to a degree. But when they come in, we give them a glimmer of hope. And a lot of times that's just all they have. And I'm like, if you just have a glimmer of hope and some willingness, we can work with you. And just trust and surrender. It's like that book, letting go. It's the surrender process, like trust, surrender, which is a very vulnerable space. And vulnerability is scary. Like vulnerability is still uncomfortable for me in a lot of ways. Like being vulnerable is not comfortable. But that's where so much healing happens too.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. It's like getting yourself into the space where the healing can happen. Then it can really be supercharged. But just to get to that space is such a journey.
Yeah.
To get to that place where you're like, you can't expect somebody to heal from alcoholism if they're in a bar all the time. So how could you, if you're in fight or flight mode all the time, how are you going to resolve the chronic health issues stemming from that pattern until you calm down, get to a place where you understand that you're safe, surrender to the reality of the moment, of the truth of the moment, which is that's over now. But a lot of what you're saying is like taking responsibility. And sometimes it sounds really harsh, I feel like, but just being like so brutally honest, like, I love Jordan Peterson. Some people may not, but I love how he talks about the truth and how it's like, when it's a righteous path to speak the truth, and people will fall away, and be offended or whatever it is. But ultimately it's the best, it's the most liberating, and you're going to get the most out of life once you surrender to the truth.
Yeah. And that falls into, so my master's thesis is in, my master's is in metaphysical sciences. And I actually wrote my thesis on overcoming the victim pattern. And so how important that is if we want to heal or have a fantastic life. And a big part of that is there's a collective. So the other element there is this the right time for me to achieve my healing? That is a huge question, because there is something beyond us. There is divine timing for things. There is certain even codes within us that unlock at certain times. No matter how, there's been certain things that I'm like aware of this pattern, and I'm like trying to break it and clear it, and it just wasn't the right time, even though I had awareness of it. And then all of a sudden it was the right time, and boom, it's liberated. So that's something I'm also aware of, is we can't force our healing, because we're so willing that we're like, let's just, blow these walls down. If it's not the right time for whatever reason, maybe me breaking it at that time was a ripple effect for a bunch of other people that needed that. Because what we heal in ourselves, we heal in the world, and we heal in others. Like this is, the universe is very mathematical. And so these are all elements. Dr. Hawkins goes into this. It's all calculable. And so that's another element too, is surrender of like, is this the right time for me to heal this or that, or completely rise above that? And if it's not to get angry, to continue on the path, to continue on that journey. And so that's a huge piece there. And the victim code, like Gene Key 55 is the victim, and then the gift is liberation, and then the Cetic state is liberation. we are currently in a collective gene key healing of the victim code in our lifetime right now. So this is a huge one. That's also why we're seeing people triggered from every little thing. Like they're offended over every little thing. They're upset. Like these are things that, I mean, it's like landmines with most humans. You know, it's like, where am I going to step on a landmine with this human? And so a big part of that is, personally, we need to overcome the victimhood. And victimhood can also be kind of the reverse aspect of like playing savior, of like taking responsibility and being like, how many times have we been told, yeah, I can do this for you, I can heal this, we can do this. That's also a victimhood thing too, on the savior aspect. And so that falls into that whole aspect of victimhood and liberation. True liberation comes from within, and then once enough of us activate that liberation, it's going to awaken that gene key 55, which we all carry, out of victimhood and start moving through liberation, which we're seeing now. That's where the awakening is happening. We're seeing people questioning things. That's part of liberation. Question things like, why is this going on? Or why hasn't this happened? Why is this happening to me? What else is out there? Those are all indicators to me collectively. And I have seen people that I never, ever in a million years would have thought would be like moving into this natural or questioning. Like even MDs, friends who are MDs, I shared with you about one of them. And he is like completely involved with like mushroom medicine and psychedelics for healing and about the consciousness. I mean, this is an MD, like, and meeting him when I did, I would never have expected that. So I'm seeing this happen all across the board, is this awakening of consciousness. And how do you awaken to consciousness? You start questioning things. Questions unlock new doors, new possibilities, whereas conclusion shuts them. And what are we done since, heck, we start school? Conclusion, answer, conclusion, answer. And if you question things, you actually get in trouble, right? In school. At least, you know, when I would ask questions that were kind of like, why are we doing this? Or it was like, why are you questioning me? I'm the teacher, you're the student. And
I still see it now. I mean, look at all the shaming going on when we question things with the social, with the virtue signaling, I think it's called.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And so when we talk about the victim mentality, how, like, this is a good segue into like how kind of the process of the illness manifests. What kind of like physical symptoms result from the victim mentality that you've seen?
Everything. Literally everything. So and this is where, so healing is more of an art than a science. The two do come together, but healing arts, that's so important. Just like art is subjective, right? Like some people love Picasso, some people love Monet, and other, you know, there's a vast array of different arts. So if we start looking at healing and healthcare in general as an art, then we can start to understand it a little better and how it's more subjective. And you are going to need a practitioner who's an artist. If you are working with a practitioner or a doctor who's not an artist, and they're just looking at like, do you fit in this box over here? Well, they have no clue the artistry that's within healing, and there's going to be a problem. So right. That being said, when you look at the victim, people have horrible things happen to them. I mean, people have come into me. I've worked with people from Project Paperclip, MK Ultra. I know some people don't believe, but for the person that has sat there and like witnessed what this has done to this individual and seen the brain patterns and heard the stories, I mean, it's hard not to break down in those sessions. Nobody can tell me anything because of the people I've worked with. And I'm sure you have met people too, where it's just like, and I think people deny it because the comprehension of something that awful is like, I don't want to believe that exists. And I get it, but it does. And so we can be victims to circumstances. We can be victims to situations, but the victimhood mentality is living as a victim. So I always tell them, acknowledge that, yes, you were a victim to that thing that happened. Yes, you were a victim to that organization who did that to you, a cult. You can be a victim within that. But if you choose to live there, that's when you're going to manifest all sorts of diseases. You're also going to start manifesting, like there's a lot of poverty in cosmic consciousness. So a lot of people remain in poverty because they're staying in this pattern, in this victimhood mentality. And in order to break free from that, especially if you don't celebrate like other people's healings, if you're trying to get healing, a lot of people get envious. That comes up a lot in our scans, is envy, a lot of health envy. Obviously, we know there's a lot of money envy. I mean, look at the influencers and Instagram and everything. but you've got to clear that, because you're going to have to work 3 times as hard if you're projecting envy out at somebody else or not celebrating another's successes purely. And so that's a big part of coming out of the victim mentality. Start celebrating others before you have what you want.
It is so it resonates so much that celebrating other people's success is healing in and of itself for a person. I think like it's something that I went through more. Well, I am healing from that. I'll be honest with you. I'm healing from jealousy, and really, I think it stemmed from like a distrust in others. But that's not reality. Like I loved like now to see my friends succeed, and as a result, the quality of my friends and friendships has become like so enhanced, and I've attracted these people into my life that I'm so proud of, and and they're enormous assets to my spiritual growth, and I hope that I can reflect that back to them, like just in just a variety of ways. Everyone's bringing their arts really and their talents into the field, and just like being happy for myself, being happy for other people has like been such a game changer for my health and like just like my overall well-being. And I think that's like a really important part of stepping out of the victimhood mentality and out of the negative patterns in our fascia, and healing generational trauma too. Like a lot of people have like envy in the family too, like that they've experienced since they were like so young. It's really become like so ingrained. It's like another appendage or something. And those people, I mean, I don't want to, I know, like, I also understand more now that people just are where they're at. And you can plant these seeds of consciousness, and you can express yourself, and that is very valuable. But when it comes to like doing the work and stuff, we can't force anyone else to do it. And I see people like taking on a lot of like pain from their families or their close relationships. Like those are the hardest ones to deal with, right? Because we didn't like consciously, like from our own understanding, like just as human beings, we're limited in our some more than others, but it doesn't feel sometimes like we chose these people, and we don't understand their medicine to us. But I think like what I've learned with my family, like I love my family deeply, and space is love, but also like there's just sometimes you just can't, there's nothing you can do. The best thing to do is just to like be yourself and live authentically, and always try to do like your very best, or like try to do my very best. And that's it, like, and we recreate our families in our friendships and in our work relationships and stuff. And it's just so hard to watch other people suffer. And I think it causes a lot of anger, and pointing the finger, and like it ties into what we were talking about before, but I'm kind of just going off on a tangent. But so let me see here. So you did talk about the vision board being an amazing tool for like manifestation. Are there like other tools that you, and also like spending the 2 minutes a day opening our minds to like a vision of a better reality? Do you have any more tips that you want to share with us about how to manifest our dreams?
It's there's I would suggest downloading the Human Design app. That is hugely important. And I think they're on Instagram. It's my HD or my Human Design. They're fantastic because we all come in with gene keys, right? So when it's in our DNA, I mean, it actually is in our DNA. And then the human design are like the mechanics, how we operate. So a huge part of manifesting the life is learning who you are. So manifesting first, who are you? Not who were you told to be or who you're trying to be to fit in or this. Like, go study yourself. And the verse, seek first the kingdom of God and all things shall be added. That's like been mine and my husband's like core kind of driving force. And the kingdom of God, what did Jesus say? Is within. How do you enter the kingdom of God? To enter the kingdom of God, you must become like a child. What is a child? Curious. They ask questions. So from a non-religious standpoint, just when you look at that kind of process, it's like, seek first the divine within you. Seek first the divine expression that you're here to be. And it's within us, which means our human design, our gene keys, study that, learn yourself. Like, I've been doing this for years. I still reread my gene keys and learning something new about myself. It's this evolutionary journey. It's not this arrival point. And that would be step one. And then step two is become like a child. So constructs in family, kind of like you were talking about, a big reason they're difficult is they have so many beliefs and constructs around who we are and like viewpoints, and they project and project and project. There's no room for growth. There's no room to rediscover your family. And that's a huge piece, is like stepping back and starting to ask questions like, who am I without all these constructs? Like, who can I be? What do I want to be? Who am I unwilling to be that if I was, would completely transform my entire life? And, to ask questions, like, not with this will not answer it. Ask questions, put it out there, allow life to then give you a feedback response. It will guide you. I wake up most days and it's like, universe, show me something beautiful and miraculous. Like, challenge the universe, like challenge life to show up for you. It will. We don't ask and you shall receive. So that would be like the number one thing. Learn yourself, become like a child, and ask questions purely out of the curiosity of your heart.
I think mushrooms, the sacred mushroom, can help with that a lot. Like we were talking about, like asking questions, becoming the observer, becoming more objective. Even just like what you're saying about like the answers are within, and then science is kind of like, it's like it backs
answers are without.
Yeah, it's like backs up your already your discovery. You can like use it as like, look, like here, it's really happening, like on the physical. Well, when you take the sacred mushroom, it grows, well, the blue, it grows neural networks in your brain. Your brain lights up in all these places where like been going down the same patterns, like skiing down the same tracks. We get deeper and deeper into them, whether they're healthy or not. As in many of them, these patterns are not healthy. As we become adults and get further into adulthood, they get deeper and harder to deviate from. When we take the sacred mushroom, we can think more like a child, like you said, like, and then that's the sacred blue mushroom, psilocybin. The sacred red mushroom, I've noticed, is more like a boundary former. And so like when you were talking earlier about, saying this is mine, this is not mine, like respectfully, idea, personifying the idea, sending it to Aruba on holiday or a permanent holiday somewhere nice. The Amanita is so powerful for setting up these boundaries. And I love what you said about like asking the universe for the answers. And I've noticed that the more I open my mind to how these answers might come in, it's not like, it's learning to, and I was up all night like thinking, sometimes this happens to me, I get really like heady and I'm just excited and in a creative state and I can't sleep and stuff's happening in my body. And that was last night. So one of the things I was thinking about was like, how do we determine like a true answer from the universe, like the intuition and like that real message, that core message that is like so divine, from something that's just like a whim? Because we get like all this information from all these different sources. How do you know when it's like, that's the path versus that's like a distraction? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's where the human design comes in, right? Because for me, it's my knowing is emotional intuition. So because I know my human design, I know what it feels like. My body will always be 100 steps ahead of my mind. So I can feel something. I may not be able to explain why. I may not even be able to know why, but I can feel it. So I've had to learn to trust that, just this knowing, and it always works out. It's literally 100% in my mind. If you try to make decisions here, I'm like, it literally has like a 0% workout rate. And I'm just, if we're still trying to do that, what's the definition of insanity? So when you go into human design, and I don't know what yours is, you can revisit that learn what your authority is. And that's how you know. And Susie over here, or John over here, learn your inner authority on the Human Design app. That's how you'll know, because we all have an intuition, but it's going to hit us differently. We're going to feel it differently. So that's where the knowing yourself, and then, oh, I know what this feels like. If I make a decision, for example, I'm just using myself, is if I'm really excited about something, I need to make a decision in a neutral space. So either if I'm like resistant or excited, I'm like, okay, feel into this, let it kind of process through my body. If it's still a yes, and I'm still feeling excited when I'm in a neutral space, then it's a yes. So that's where that comes in. Know your human design mechanics, and then you'll know how to listen to your intuition. That's a great thing, because people ask that all the time, and there's slight variations in how we can all know what is truly our intuition.
Right. I think that's very wise to take, because I think people tend to be like polarized, and they'll either or do both, but like dive right into something, or like be very conservative, and both of those things can like hurt us. There's like a balance of it. So like personally, I will try to, and by no means have I not made mistakes. I've made lots, and I'm sure I'll make lots more. But like some of the best decisions have come from like finding a balance of that polarization, and like taking, because I tend to jump into things, or I tend to let things like stew for way too long. Like I'll want to say something to somebody, and I'll get like embarrassed about it, and then I'll just let it like turn into this thing. And it's like, no, like for some reason I'm being called to express this. If it doesn't work out, it's like fine. Like, so you just do your best to like put it together.
Yeah.
In a way that's like best communication, with gratitude, with reverence, and then let it go, you know? And yeah, because I think like right now we're in this thing where it's like the paradigm is shifting so much with money, with health, with all these things, and we're making these like pivotal choices where there used to be like, we used to be so indoctrinated and so ingrained in the system, and we just were like, oh, that's what you do. You just invest in the stock market, and you buy a house, and you go to the doctor, and you get health insurance, and you go to school, and then you go to college, and that's what your kids do. And if anyone goes outside the norm, they're an outlier, they're a punk, or whatever it is. Now it's like, no, like really, literally, if you're doing any research at all, you understand that this is like, I mean, it's to the point where you just, if you're a, middle class person or whatever, you cannot ignore it anymore. Interest rates are so high, like it's just in your face. It's just a slap in the face. And you can really, we're teetering on this thing where it's like, we have to make innovative choices. We have to reach within, and it's beautiful, but it's also, so yeah, I think it's like important right now to like be able to decipher these feelings. And I would, yeah.
Yeah, that we're in a turning point in humanity, completely. And this may be very frightening for people, but every system that we have known growing up will be crumbling. It is crumbling. So the new is going to have to take place. And so how do we navigate a world that's no longer, control was always illusion, but now like literally the theme of 2023 is literally nothing is in control in your life and in the world. So surrender, and trust, and learn to walk your path with your divine guidance. And that's just what it is. So everything that we thought we knew is crumbling, and the systems that held those up are crumbling. And so the interest rates, all of these things, everything's going to be changing. And if we do not center ourselves in our emotional mastery and start to learn, what is my path on this earth? Because if we are walking our path on this earth, like the reason that we are here from the divine, and, and I'm speaking to people who believe that we're all here for a purpose. If you don't, I don't know, but I know that every being, animal, every sign has been a sign from the divine. Like I have a love affair with the divine, and it's like immense. And so when we are walking that path, we will always be supplied for. We will always be supplied for, no matter what is happening in the world. The only true safe path, or a path where we're protected, is the one we were put on earth for. So if we're trying to walk somebody else's path, that's not good. If we are trying to do the old way, we're going to have some serious problems and create problems and pain upon ourselves. And so this is at a point where it's like, how eagles push their babies out of the nest, and the parents are like, you either fly or you die. we're at that point. We're either going to fly or die. And I've always said this, I'm like, we're coming to a point where we all have to evolve spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, or we are going to go extinct. We're going to die. So there are two paths, and it's fly or die, evolve or die. And the only way forward, and it's frightening. Like, I have had to process a lot of my own fears, and like, just like the unknown is the theme. Like, now it is the unknown. We're in a realm of trust, and we have to learn to walk with that, not knowing, but trusting and learning how we make decisions in life. Okay, what do I need to do today? What is my intuition? You just take it one moment at a time, because that's the theme of 2023 and beyond. It's beautiful because there's a lot of blessings in store. There's a lot of abundance, a lot of like messages of go big, be who you were truly meant to be. That's a beautiful thing. But the scary part is we have to surrender to not knowing how, when, or what anything's going to turn out like.
Yeah, I like to tell myself that it's always darkest before the dawn, and that there are cycles, like that's nature. And I study nature, and I try to live with less fear in that understanding. And in the process of facing our fears, which can be scary, there is a release. That's the surrender. And I think you're right. Like, we are protected when we're walking our divine path. That's just another way of saying we're walking our divine path, is to say that we're protected, and to say that we're divine beings, and to say that we're fearless in this path. And I think the universe will show us, but we have to be willing to, we don't have to do anything, but I've found it beneficial to my life and just existence to listen, to really listen, and to try to make time to slow down so that I can hear the call and listen to what people are saying to me, listen to what my body is telling me, not push it so much. I used to be in the seafood business, and I just burned myself, burned out so hard. I was doing something that was like a family business that I thought was something I was supposed to do. And I'm not built for that. I learned a lot though. So yeah, when we make mistakes, we go through it, and it's okay if we survive that. We hopefully come out better and with a greater understanding and a bigger capacity to serve ourselves and others. Like, if you don't walk through the fire, how will you know what it's like to be in the fire? It's the darkest moments that teach us the most. So I try, even though it's difficult, I do try to have gratitude, like for all of it. And it really makes it easier. And I try to look at when something like bad happens to me, I really am more and more trying to see those silver linings and to see the lesson that came out of it. And I feel so much more at peace when I can, dig a little deeper beyond just what happened and like pick out the nuggets of wisdom, because a diamond is coal under pressure,
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of mountains of treasures we're standing upon until we become curious. I mean, I think of like that recent thing with Joe Rogan and the mammoth bones up here in Alaska and Fairbanks. And it's like those mammoth tusks and stuff. How did they even know that they were down there? Someone had an inkling. That wasn't a place where they'd ever found mammoth bones before. And it's like, what kind of treasures, and it's metaphor too. It's like, what kind of treasures are we standing upon that we don't know about? So yeah, the curiosity is just so important. But I noticed that you have Martin Luther King behind you, and he is definitely one of my biggest role models and someone that I've looked up to. And I just have so much respect for the work he did and his connection to the divine. So I guess with that, I'll ask you, like, who are some of your role models in this path?
So that's actually a piece of art from Michael Jackson. Most people don't know that Michael Jackson drew art with like crayons. This is one of like several hundred. And
Michael Jackson drew that picture of Martin Luther King. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. I'm getting the chills right now. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so his art is really special. Michael's one of my guides. He's incredible. His like soul is just so full of healing and love. But that's a really special picture just because of that reason. And he did a lot of Disney, a lot of like important people, and that was one of his passions. And most people don't know about that. So kind of like that treasure you're talking about. I mean, we know the treasures he brought forth with music and dance, but most people don't even know this part of him. And how much more of us are we not sharing with the world, you know, for
Right.
different reasons too. So yeah, he's fantastic. Both of them. My so who do my role models? That's a very interesting question because it's easy to start idolizing people and start to want to be like them. So I've never like had like role models in that way. I've had inspiration, people of inspiration who have impacted my life. Tony Robbins being one of them. Since I was a very young girl, that was like the beginning of understanding the subconscious mind, the power that we have within. So Tony Robbins has been a major impactful individual in my life. So has like Royal Raymond Rife, who is an old frequency. I mean, that's a whole other story, but a lot of the individuals who were working on standing up for truth of how we heal and were eventually vilified, their character assassinated, and then those that originally supported him betrayed him because they were threatened with jail time and to lose their medical licenses. So I really appreciate the ones who have stood up and have really been like, no, there's a better world, and I have proof. Like, this is something that we can adopt. So Rife is one of them. A lot of them are like spiritual beings too. My dog Pepe, he is a major inspiration for me and has been such a powerful guide. So I don't necessarily have like role models. Like I have people of influence who have kind of impacted and guided me and given me different elements of empowerment.
I like how you say that. My stepson, sometimes I show him clips and I tell him like, he's like, well, that person did this bad thing. And I'm like, well, that's true. And I'm not saying I want to like be a close personal friend of this person, but this person is very good at business. You know, here's something that I take, a lesson that I take from this person, because we're all, you know, us humans are just that. We're humans. We're imperfect. We're here on earth. It's a messy place. It's where you bump up against something, you feel it. As my partner says.
That's goes back to the whole like creating a new world, right? Like unifying. And what we love to do is nitpick and find like, I don't like this, or this person did this. I'm like, well, let's put a microscope on you. Like, we all have our downfalls. All of us, we're imperfectly human. And as soon as we step out of judgment is the number one killer on this planet. Judgment of ourselves and others. And we all do it. It's still something I'm training myself out of, like way less than I was, but I'll still catch myself and I'm like, yep, okay, step back into observation, neutral space, and just like observe. So judgment is the number one killer. And as soon as we stop being the assassins on earth, which all of us have contributed to. So none of us can say, it's like, Jesus, throw the first stone. None of us can. And we've all assassinated people's livelihoods from judgment. That's the truth. Like we may not have taken a physical gun and, you know, shot someone, but judgment is equally damaging. And because it's invisible and we don't see the effects, we think we get away with it, or we think it's okay. So that is something that we really need to step into and reflect on, every single one of us, like daily. And everybody has something to give to this world. Right. Everybody's going to let you down in some way. So as soon as we accept all of that, that's where we're no longer polarizing like good, bad, right, wrong. It's like, let's just land in, okay, this is expressing as it is. It kind of comes into mistakes like you were talking about. If you look at the word, it's like a mistake. Like when you're filming a movie, okay, you missed a shot, you miss a took. So refilm it, choose differently, choose a different lens, maybe a different angle, like change the perception and the lens that you're looking through. And the mistake is not necessarily a mistake. It can become a lesson at that point.
Right. And huge lessons, amazing teachers in everywhere we look, if we choose to look at it that way. So let's see. I'm going to have to get going a little bit soon. My dog wants to go out.
So does mine. Yeah.
We're at the whim of our dogs, of course.
Yes.
But just to wrap things up, let's see here. Maybe just to wrap things up, we could just touch on again. Well, I have two things that I think would be good for closing. What kind of outlooks do you hold about being of service? Like, what kind of mantras do you live? I mean, you were just kind of talking about it, like releasing judgment. Sounds like it's a big one.
That is. So
knowing yourself was another one that I heard loud and clear. So if there's anything you wanted to add.
Know yourself, study yourself. Yes. Actually study yourself. Yes. So knowing yourself, eliminating judgment or working towards that. And then being aware that being of service doesn't necessarily have to be like you or I, like having a ministry, working with sacred mushrooms or working in a frequency clinic. Being of service is, how can I show up and be a beacon of light and love and hope and joy today? Maybe it's saying hi to the person that you walk by. Maybe it's complimenting the person checking you out at the grocery store. Like, that is so big, because we're meant to go big as far as who we are, but we have to do it in the small things on a daily basis. That's where that we have to become like living dichotomies, where it's like the two opposing forces become one. So we may have a big vision for our life and what we're here to do, and how we get there is the small things. It's, how can I be of service to the person in front of me? How can I be of service to these dishes in front of me? That has changed over the years. Before you could ask me, it was like, be the change you want to see in the world. It was like some big thing. It's that quote. I don't have it exactly accurate. When I was young and ignorant, I wanted to change the world. When I became wise, I wanted to change myself. And it's really looking at every single action. And I have to practice this. I don't look at every action, but I'm getting better. It's the intention. It's working towards it, of like, I have to do the dishes, I have to do the laundry, I have to scoop the dog's poop. Like, looking at every act as a divine and magical one. That's how we are of service. And then the vision board is really kind of the bigger vision, but you have to get there from looking at these very basic acts as the most magical divine gifts. Because one thing, you and I don't know, are we going to be here tonight, tomorrow, like next year? All of our days are numbered. That's just the truth. And we have to come to terms with mortality. Like, that's a huge piece, is like, these mortality things are not on our terms. They're not even known to us. So showing up in a way that we're like, my husband, that's something I'm practicing with, is like, the people closest to us, there's a lot of things that can get on each other's nerves, right? Like, don't sweat the small stuff, but it's really like, okay, if he were to die tomorrow and like just not be here suddenly, would I be bitching about this? And I'm asking questions to help myself become a better person in my day-to-day life. So I would say that's like the huge thing right now.
Yeah, like reverence. I was gonna say the same. It's like, it's so important to like have reverence for your home, your surroundings. That's like respect for yourself, and for the people around you, and just for the spirits that are here, like the energy of the space. In the psychedelic world, people call it set and setting. If you take a high dose of mushrooms, you're very sensitive to your surroundings. Well, you're still very sensitive to your surroundings. You're just not on a high dose of mushrooms all the time.
You're not as aware.
Right. But you're spending more time in it. So it is like soup. I always feel like when I feel like in a rut or something, I clean my house. That's what I do. I clean my house. I clean every corner. And then like magically, some things come to light. That's my magic. My mom used to say cleanliness is godliness. She's not a religious person, but I think she is, because she understands that. And she was always like cleaning house and stuff. And I didn't get it for a long time. Actually, I think the mushrooms helped me understand that. But cleaning house and cleaning house inside. And like you said, like just respecting our partners and our children, and, being nice. It's been hard, I'm blessed to have such a loving, kind partner, and I'm a little bit more like grumpy and like a little bit, and he puts up with it and it's so gracefully, but I'm like, wow, what a blessing. I can learn from this so much. And I've cleaned up my act a lot, actually. So
we're all a journey in progress.
Yeah. So I love that. So this will be the last question. How do you, Dr. Anna, how do you connect with the natural world?
Meaning like nature or okay.
Mother Nature. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the desert and it's very dry. So it's very different than where I grew up in Seattle, where it's lush and you can go out into the grass and the sea. So that has been very different. But out here, I usually get downloads if I just go in my backyard. We get sun pretty much like all year round, which is amazing. It's such a blessing. So I go out in the backyard and I just kind of like ask, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to hear? What can I contribute to you? And I just sit and I just be, and I'll hear the birds. And then, I'm seeing the trees. I just become present. I can't really ground, like the dirt doesn't ground you as much out here because it's so dry. So it's very different in that way. But if I'm just present with nature, I start to receive the clarity and the downloads and the peace and calm that grounding does. So out here in the desert, that's how I do it.
Okay, that's beautiful. Yeah, it can be a challenge in different environments for sure. Like with people that live in cities, like for me right now, it's really cold out. So but yeah, I think like with what we have, like there are birds even in the city. There are, trees, even though it's really cold out, even if I can only go out for a short amount of time in the day, but like taking those, that short time just to get out there, get the cold, crisp air, and to just like connect with nature. Like even if it's hot in Arizona in the summer, I'm sure it's very hot. Like just having those few moments to like just take it in for a second, I think can be like super healing for us. And it's free. Yeah. It's free and available to all of us. So
it is.
Yeah, I know you're a water woman. So I know that I'm sure it can be challenging in Tucson, but you guys have it's such a magical vortex there. I can't wait to come check it out sometime.
Yeah, the land is very sacred here. It's a harsh teacher. It's like when we first moved out here, it was like a intensive 6 month shamanic journey. Like our land is very shamanic, like where our home is. And it was just like stirring up every single thing. So there is a lot of healing that happens out here. I know everybody thinks of Sedona, but to me, Tucson's the divine masculine, Sedona's the divine feminine. So both of them bring out different elements for sure.
Wow. Well, when we come down, we'll have to do like a sojourn to Sedona and to Tucson to feel both of those energies. I'm really interested, we've talked about, in learning more about the toad that's in your area, and also just the history with crystals and so one of these days, it's kind of hard to make solid plans for some reason, but when the timing is divine. And I'd love for you guys to come up here to Alaska too.
Yes.
Maybe
we'll take a ship up there.
The cruises are very popular up here. Yep. And I came up on a ship the first time I came to Alaska. So
I love ships. I could live on the sea, like on the sea.
Well, if that's on your vision board, I'm sure it will.
It is.
Okay, Dr. Anna Blessing, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been really fun talking. I think we covered a lot of interesting topics, and I can't wait to do this again with you sometime.
Same. All right. We'll have an awesome day. We'll get to our pups now.
Yeah.